Welcome, everybody. For those of you turning in, this is one of our, or this is our monthly webinar for February, being hosted by Weissman Law. We've been doing these now for about a little over a year, bringing in friends of the firm, other professionals, and artists, really just to talk about the work they're doing, see how it touches on often the intersection of digital, new media, traditional entertainment and arts. And of course, we've got the pleasure of throwing in a little bit of legal advice or at least legal information into all these things. Before I introduce Gabrielle, I do have to make the disclaimer that everything being discussed here today is for informational purposes only. Anything coming out of my mouth is not intended to be taken as legal advice. Certainly nothing coming out of Gabrielle's mouth. But if you do have any specific legal questions or issues or things that you'd like to follow up on, we highly recommend you follow up with a licensed attorney in your jurisdiction. Now, with that being said, I am very happy to welcome my good friend Gabrielle back to the webinar. She was here about a year ago talking about some other things. So a little bit of background about Gabrielle. I've known her since probably 2017. Many years ago, I had the privilege of working at a social media manager agency, which in 2017 was kind of a new, weird thing. I didn't know too much about social media at the time, figuring it out, and Instagram was the default platform back then. Unbeknownst to me, as I was starting with this client, um, the neighbors in the office, who was owned by the same parent company, was a magazine called Nylon Magazine, which around that same time, maybe slightly before I started, had made the pretty radical decision to stop printing their physical magazine and go digital only. And part of that move was taking Gabrielle, who was head of the digital component of the magazine, and making her editor in chief, which was a pretty extreme move to say the least, pretty relatively unheard of. But looking back at it, made a ton of sense. I ended up also becoming the lawyer for Nylon and had the pleasure of getting to work with Gabrielle hand in hand as we were coming up with all these new policies. And so much of it was just understanding not just the legal component and how that was going to play out with this magazine, what we could do, because there were certainly many times where I had to go to journalists and say, hey, yeah, you can't steal all those photos off of Instagram and just credit those users, which is a big downer a lot. But beyond that, there was just a lot of new hoops we had to jump through, a lot of new things we had to think about, obviously on the legal side, but probably more importantly, more to the point, on the business side, the side of getting the right kind of attention on platforms, because now the magazine was operating through its website as well as the social platform. So we had I'll say a very fascinating time working there back then. Since then, Gabrielle's moved on to wear a bunch of different hats. She worked at Netflix, heading some of their social media initiatives for a while, which was pretty fascinating. But why she's here today, and what I would imagine is kind of the real feather in her cap, is she is about to release her first published book, uh, upcoming soon, and is also taking all of this knowledge she has from her previous jobs and is applying now to help other authors sort of figure out just how things work on social media and what you should potentially be doing as an author. And we wanted to bring in Gabrielle today to talk about this stuff, to give maybe a little more of a formal presentation than we're used to. If you can see on the screen already, there is a PowerPoint presentation that she's about to give. But I think it's so important to, especially in 2026, start thinking about the mindset, if you are an author or really a creative or artist in any type, of not how do I become an influencer, but how do I promote myself in a way on social media that makes sense to me, to my audience, and frankly gets me the right type of audience following me. Because unfortunately or fortunately, whichever way you want to spin it, it's very difficult to be any type of artist or writer or creative in 2026 without some sort of social presence. I've been working in the publishing space on the legal end for a while, and traditionally the upside of working with a big publisher compared to self-publishing, at least from our perspective when we're negotiating things, is arguably the marketing arm that's supposed to be behind it. But it's shifted significantly, and you see the money changing, and you see the obligations changing, and there's a big shift now. I'm seeing quite a bit with other authors where the marketing obligations seem to be falling a little bit more on the authors themselves, which not something that would have seemed realistic or necessary maybe 10 or 15 years ago. But with that being said, I'm blabbing on for a bit. I'd love to turn this to Gab and just let her kind of take the floor for the next little while. By all means, if people have questions as she's doing this presentation, type them in the chat, whether you're on LinkedIn or if you're on Zoom, and we'll answer them kind of as we're going through it or save some of them for the end. And with that, Gab, please take the floor.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be back in this series talking about social media. When I was a digital director at Nylon, a big part of that job was running the social media team. And because of Nylon's success on social, I do think that's what allowed them to pivot to digital first, instead of just shutting the whole thing down. Like we really became a big voice on social. And then when I went to Netflix, it was kind of like marketing boot camp. And my 2 years there allowed me to start freelancing at marketing agencies here in LA, doing social media campaigns for film and TV, for brands. And Adam, as you mentioned along the way, I've written 4 books. And it's really interesting to have a foot in publishing and a foot in brand marketing and see what one can learn from the other. So basically, it's really important to remember that social media is one tool in your arsenal. The most important thing when promoting a book or any piece of art is always going to be word of mouth. There is nothing that's ever going to be more powerful than person to person recommendation. But social media is still important because it gets you word of mouth, probably faster and at larger scale. So that's kind of what we're thinking about when we think about social is like, how do we get people talking about this thing in a way where they will tell their friends about it? I think that for writers, Instagram and TikTok can be really scary. A lot of the writing process involves like living in a hole where you're in goblin mode, and then all of a sudden you have to be a salesperson for your own work. And for a lot of us, that really doesn't come naturally. So in this presentation, I have some basic things that might sound obvious or might sound like revelations depending on your comfort level. Oh, and now it's not letting me. Adam. Oh, there it is. Okay. So this presentation, it is geared for authors, but it is also applicable to anyone marketing your art. And you can use these tips regardless of where you are in your career. If you are afraid of social media, this should be helpful. And if you need some strategy for an upcoming launch. So through this presentation, we're going to go through how to use Instagram effectively as an author, how to do book promotion in a cringe-free way, what the different formats are and what they get you, how to have a great launch, and then how to grow your presence online in a sustainable way. So first, we need a total mindset shift. The promotion of your book is not really about the promotion of your book. It's about the promotion of you. People will follow you because they're interested in you and buy the book because they're interested in you, not the other way around. It is a long-term career investment to have a good online presence, to be someone people like to follow. And honestly, selling your books does start with likability and how much connecting you're doing with your readers. With your readers. That's a mix of readers and audience. Not just around your pub day, but in general. So, this is the number one rule of being an artist on social media. Nobody knows anything ever. And if you take one thing away from this, I want it to be that. So, your best friend, your family, your coworkers, they do not understand when your book is coming out. They are very confused by arcs and pre-orders. It the the timeline makes no sense to people who aren't in your industry. Even sometimes your editor doesn't know your pub date off the top of her head, right? So your job on social is to be easy to understand and make things really simple for people who want to find out these things that they don't know, because remember, they don't know anything. So, at a glance, your profile should tell us everything we need to know. So, you would be surprised how many authors don't have these things in their profile, but basically, I want it to say that you're an author, the title of your books. If you have a book coming out, make sure your pub date is everywhere. I also want to know what you look like, how to pre-order or order, and your book tour dates. And you can do this through your bio and through your pinned posts so that when someone goes to your page, these are the first things they see and they don't have to search for them. So now when we think about posting, people always ask me, what is the best format? And the answer is really that it depends on your goals. Different kinds of Instagram posts are going to get you different things. So carousels get the most engagement through likes and comments. Reels are being promoted into the feeds of people who don't follow you. So that's going to get you more growth. Stories is kind of like free advertising. It puts you to the top of people's page. So this reminds people that you exist. And while I haven't seen a lot of growth from stories, this is just good to do. But regardless of how you're posting, a healthy account utilizes all of the different types of posts. So, what makes a good post regardless of format? The best posts are going to tell a story. Right now, the algorithm wants you to hook the audience within 3 seconds. That means when you're posting something, don't do any like hemming and hawing, don't do a preamble, don't apologize, just get right into it. You might be familiar with the phrase millennial pause. It's something that Gen Z noticed millennials do before they start talking on camera. Don't do it, just start talking. If you record yourself with a millennial pause, edit it out. So for example, some ways to start videos could be, before I became an author, I had no idea that blah, 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 or no one wants to talk about how this, and this. Either way, come up with a hook, get right to it. And then be an early adopter of new tools. This might sound obvious, but the algorithm wants you to try the new things it's putting out. It's testing its own tools via its users. So the next time there's a new feature, don't be afraid of it, just use it, and it'll reward you by getting more views to that post. It's important to be consistent. You don't have to post every day. In fact, I don't think you should, but showing up in feeds a few times a week is key. And if you have a book coming out, I would start getting into this habit at least a year in advance so that it doesn't seem like, oh, you have a book coming out, you're posting all the time out of nowhere. And then the other thing that's really important is to show face. And if you're wondering why, just think about what is showing up the most in your feeds right now from people you don't follow. It's probably people talking to camera. So if it's working for them, it's going to work for you. So I have a lot of clients who do not want to talk to camera. And I totally get it. It's scary. You're not trained in broadcast. But if you work up to it, I think you'll find that the reward for doing it outweighs how scary it is. So, a couple examples of how to work up to it. You can do a carousel of photos of you with text that tells a complete story as you slide through. So I love Yersa Daily Words content. She's this first one, and it's like a beautiful picture, a clear hook, and then you scroll through and you see lots of photos of her that explain this story. Another thing you can do is a reel that's a video of you recreating a trending format. I worked with Alana Masad on this, which the trending format was you look happier, thanks, I blah, blah, blah. And instead of talking, she's just like turning around and showing the book. This did really, really well for her. Again, she's not talking to camera, but she's showing herself. Another thing to do is have someone take videos of you either on your book tour or writing or going about your day, and then stitch it together in a compilation that kind of feels like B-roll and do a voiceover. Make sure it's your own voice and that you're telling a story. That'll still give that kind of personal touch without having to be like talking to your phone. And I promise that once you see the strong positive response to doing it this way, you will feel much more comfortable talking to camera. So the algorithm is constantly changing. This information is based on what it wants right now, but it could change. So this is not forever rules. But in this moment, the algorithm is prioritizing for shares. So likes is no longer the most important metric. What it wants is for you to be posting things that people are DMing to each other. It is really prioritizing that person-to-person sharing. And then saves. It loves when a lot of people save your post. So those are, it sounds counterintuitive because likes and comments are the most visible, but shares and saves are super important right now. So make sure when you're posting content, you're thinking about, is this something people will send to a friend, or is this something people will save so that they can reference it for themselves? And again, the algorithm still wants you. So people will buy your product if they like you. Make sure that your social media feels like there's a living person behind it. And it's up to you to figure out your boundaries around that, how much of your real life you feel comfortable showing. You obviously do not have to share super personal details. I think it's really easy to make it feel like your life, without posting from the doctor's office or, whatever private things you're doing. And then repetition. So I don't mean repetition of your own content. I mean repetition of everyone's content. So this is why formats start to trend. The algorithm loves when there's a trend that people hop on and do their own version of it. So, for example, like there was a moment where all of a sudden my feed was full of painters who were posting reels of them slowly revealing their painting. And my wife is a painter, and so I was like, "Can we just try this on your account?" And it immediately got picked up by the algorithm. Should you spend money? Sure, if you want to, you can always spend money. Paid boosting does help because it gets your content to people who don't follow you. You've probably seen this, there are services that let people comment a specific word on your post and they'll get an automatic DM from you. And this is great because the algorithm loves when the post converts to DMs. That being said, spend strategically and sparingly and never rely on ads alone because the organic growth is what's going to drive your platform in general. And then if you want to grow your account, it's really important to engage meaningfully with other accounts. I recommend doing it 10 minutes before and after you post, and try to do half accounts that you're already following and half accounts that are similar to yours that you're not following. You can find this through your For You page. Prioritize posting highly shareable assets. We went through this, but not just something someone wants to post to stories, but something they'll want to send to their friends, occasionally pay to boost. Recreate trending formats. Make sure you use every tool as soon as it's available. And then ultimately, just like be patient. It is really hard to grow right now. I think the era of getting 5,000 followers overnight is over, but that's okay. Like, we're just in a new era and we can work with it. People always want to know how often to post. This is constantly changing month to month. I would recommend Googling it for whenever you're starting your campaign. But this is kind of the most recent data that I've been working with. So 3 to 5 stories daily, 3 to 4 reels weekly, 1 to 2 carousels weekly, and then consider comments, DMs, and shares as part of your growth strategy. So set aside 10 to 20 minutes a day engaging with other accounts. And then specifically, how often should you be posting about your book? So you don't want to confuse people by posting too much about the book too soon. Basically, 6 months to a year is when you'll have your cover announcement and a pre-order link. Usually, or typically in the past, publishers would tell you to post your publisher's marketplace deal announcement, but then there would be this huge gap in time between the post of the deal announcement and the cover with the pre-order link. And I have found that it's almost like a waste of buzz to post the announcement without the link. So talk to your publisher, and if they're okay with it, wait. Wait to do the PM announcement until you have a cover and a pre-order link so you can post it all at once and have like one big exciting day. And then 3 months out, start posting the early reviews. So by then you should have your Kirkus review, your Publisher's Weekly review, People will be getting arcs and you can repost those things. And then a month out is when you start focusing heavily on the book and book related content. So here is where, if you're coming up with carousels or reels that tell a story, I would schedule them the month out. And you can ease into posting every day. You can do like 2 days a week, 3 days a week, 4 days a week, 5 days a week, and do it like that. I think that's better than out of nowhere starting to post every day. But during your pub week, you're going to be posting every day. You're going to be posting multiple times a day because you will have so much content to post. And hopefully that's press clippings, that's tour events, that's information. This is a big celebration, and nobody will fault you for posting a million times during your pub week. And then I think the 2 weeks post launch, you have to still keep posting. So document your tour, your press, and then amplify what readers are saying. Okay, so what tone should you be posting on social? In brand work, we talk a lot about voice and tone, and I think this is something that authors don't consider when they do their strategies. So it's really important to me to mention. Humor always works. It's also helpful to be earnest, direct, sound grateful. Vulnerability is always a win, and then excitement. Overall, your posts should aim to entertain, inspire, educate, or better yet, a combination of the three. And if you're not entertaining, inspiring, or educating, I would ask yourself, like, what is the point of this and is it important? So, what doesn't work? Vagueness. So, this is like posting about an event, but not saying what time it is. Posting about your book, but not saying when it's coming out. Being self-deprecating. People hate that. Why would you do that? Be proud of yourself. No context images, even if they're really beautiful, no longer work on Instagram. And then this is a pet peeve of mine, but I promise there's data behind it. Complaining um, unless it's really valid. And something that's invalid to me is complaining about the writing itself. You are so lucky to be an artist. And if you hate doing it, why are you doing it? People are jealous of you. So if you find yourself starting to complain about your revisions or your deadlines, I would just pause and say, like, is this going to help my brand, or is this just going to make people annoyed at me? And then maybe don't post it. A valid complaint is an actually dire situation. So if you feel like posting about that, that's fine. And then anything overly promotional that prioritizes the sales of the book over your brand as an author is not going to work. And lastly, as we all know, there's a lot of discourse around books among readers. I personally do not think authors should wade into discourse. I think it's really bad karma. And I think there is no way to always say the right thing, and you will just get yourself in trouble. So, how are we converting the social media to sales? So, there's a saying in marketing that is promote the sizzle, not the steak. And if you've never heard that before, think of an Applebee's commercial. They're not saying where the beef came from, they're not saying the ingredients. They're showing you it's sizzling in a pan and being enjoyed by a table of people. So basically, it's the emotional and sensory experience of the product, not information about the product that's going to sell it. So when you apply this to book marketing, instead of saying, please buy my book, please buy my book, talk about the sizzle, talk about the experience of writing, publishing, touring, who you are, how writing fits into your life. You can talk about the themes, characters, and places within the book that are important to you, the feeling the book gives, inspiration, and other books you love will all help sell your book. Um, so instead of saying this book is good, you can share reviews that do that for you. You don't want to be too self-congratulatory, um, but other people will be talking about your book, and so you can amplify those posts. So this is the last and maybe the most important point. You have to be a good literary citizen. This is something nobody tells you. You have to learn from experience, but hopefully me telling you will help. It's really hard to launch a book in a vacuum. And by vacuum, I mean without a literary community. And I'm sure this applies to all kinds of artists. But you need the support of people doing similar things. A, so you don't go insane, and B, because everything has to have a context. And so if your book comes out in the context of other books and other authors, then it kind of has its own ecosystem and people will find you. So the best way to be a good literary citizen is to just start posting about books you like and tagging the author, whether or not you know them personally. I mean, think about how nice it feels when people do that for you. And just start doing that when you're reading. You can reach out directly to authors to say hi and tell them you loved their work. One thing that's really important, that's kind of an offline thing, is go to your local bookstore events. When I moved to LA, I just started showing up to book events at Skylight Books. It is how I made half of my friends who are all authors. And while you're there, post and tag from the event. It's just about participating in the literary scene that's happening. Offer to be a conversation partner to smaller authors when they come through your town. I always say yes to blurbing books. I know some people don't have time to do that, but I think it's important. And then I always like to reach out to my pub day twins because you're publishing a book the same day, and I think it's really easy to feel competitive. And so to get ahead of the feeling of competition, turn it into a feeling of mutual support and turn people into your friends and support each other through it. And they will post about your book, you will post about their book, and it'll all just start to build. And that's what I have for you.
That was great. Thank you. I really love that last slide because I think it's becoming so apparent in not just the literary space, but really arts and entertainment and the creator space in general of how important real life connections are. And it's so crucial to remember that even though we're talking about, yeah, building an online presence, which in theory is something you could do from your bedroom and not talk to anybody, it's only going to be as successful as the IRL components that go with it. And especially in 2026, there's this hunger of audiences to get out of their house and do stuff. And I
Yeah.
feel like being connected to that as an artist is a big part of it. So it's nice to see that this ostensibly antisocial activity actually feeds into something social. And the more you can have them both being complementary, the better. I have a couple questions for you that are sort of interrelated, which is, I guess I'll preface it with, not every author has a book releasing every year. And a lot of your focus in this presentation is on pre-launch and post-launch. But then for many authors and many other types of artists, there's going to be periods of time where there is no launch to talk about. I guess my kind of series of questions is what should you be focusing on then? Should you even be, continuing to try to grow your audience then when you don't necessarily have something big coming up or big that just happened? And I guess tying into that, I think having talked to enough artists and authors, it's a lot easier for them to, I don't want to say hide behind, but use their upcoming release or their upcoming project as the focal point so they can take a step back. So even though you're espousing all these things about adding your personality into it and really being yourself, you still have that book that you can say, look at this, and your face is maybe an inch behind it, right? So I guess the question is, what should you be developing in terms of tone for yourself when it doesn't necessarily connect directly to a book that you're releasing?
Well, look, I think it's easier to grow when you have a book coming out because you have the benefit of a campaign that the publisher is doing that'll bring people to you. But it's a misconception that promotion of the book ends once the book is out. If anything, that's when it begins. That's when people are reading it. So actually, I think you should still be posting about your books all the time. Posting about your life as a writer. Yes, but like don't abandon your books just because they're out. I mean, my first book came out in 2021, and I still get tagged in people finding it, whether it's at the library or the bookstore. These things have a really long tail, and that's the point. It's like there's so much hype around your release day, but the release day is consumer focused, not reader focused. And so the reader focus comes once people have read it. So it's like you don't really ever stop. That being said, I have heard people say that it's important to like disappear for a while every now and then. And I do think there's merit to that. I think like you're a writer, you need to be writing. You're an artist, you need to be making your art. I think going dark for a few weeks and then coming back and saying, you know, here's what I've been working on. I do think that has value. I think people understand.
Makes a lot of sense. Ian in the Zoom chat has a couple very specific questions, if you can see those. If you want to read them out as well to the audience.
Yeah, two questions. Any general rules about when to post, a day of the week, time of day? And two, if you're going to take out one ad or paid push for a post, what are your recommendations for pub date scope audiences? Okay. So, in your analytics within your Instagram account, you will be able to see the times of day and the days of the week that your followers are the most active online. You might have to click around a little bit to find that, but it is in there. So I recommend posting then. It's different for every person. That being said, the way the algorithm works now, it also like kind of doesn't matter because the feed is no longer chronological. Um, and one thing to note is one of the benefits of posting a carousel is that it's going to show up in people's, if people don't like it the first time they see it, it's going to show up twice using the second image as the first image. So if you post a carousel at a bad time, it'll come up again for people. So this is different per person. It's different depending on what your app tells you. But all that information is going to be in there. And then if you're going to take out one ad or paid push for a post, what are your recommendations for pub date scope audiences? So it kind of depends on your goals. I like to do one as like a pre-order push. And if you're not self-published, sometimes the publisher will do it for you. So you can have them boost your posts, which is really helpful. And then once the book is out and they can order it, I would do a big carousel that's like you and the book and a bunch of press and a link to order it and do that.
That's very helpful info. Jumping off one of your last comments, you've worked with some relatively large publishers. What kind of coordination are they doing with you, if anything, when it comes to this promotional work?
Um, it's interesting because it's like you only have insight into their strategy for your book. You don't really know what their full ecosystem strategy is. But it depends on the book. And like some books get more of a social investment from the publisher than others. My first novel got a bunch of social promotion from them. My second didn't. And with Long Island Girls, which comes out in June, the social team seems like very ready to be reposting and engaging and collaborating. So it's like you kind of never know what sort of marketing investment your publisher will be making until you're 4 months out. And then it becomes very clear.
Yeah, and I will say, as a lawyer who's now negotiated, I don't know how many publishing agreements. It's always one of the questions I ask, and I would say, almost without fail, the publisher almost says definitively we can't put that in the contract, which it
Yeah.
makes it very strange because I think in most other uh, areas of entertainment, that stuff is fairly transparent. But in the book world, they manage to kind of stay behind a bit of a smokescreen, which is not something that I'm necessarily used to coming from other areas.
Well, I think there's so much wait and see energy with books, and it's like the editor is not the only person who has to love it. There is like a sales team who has to buy in, and those people don't read it until the editor says it's done, which is long after the contract is signed. And so there are many, many internal decisions that you never know about what priority the book is. And that doesn't happen when the contract is made.
Yep, absolutely. Which, as a lawyer, is tough to deal with, but it is
Yeah,
what it
no,
is.
I mean, as an author, it's tough to deal with too. And I'm kind of glad that it wasn't until my fourth book that I saw how good things could be.
Yeah,
You
we've
know?
had that conversation.
Yeah.
It's very true. Um, Outside of your promotional work for your own stuff, do you find yourself being active on social? Like, because I know when we met, you were very active and to the point that like you were being recognized on the street
Yeah.
when we were hanging out sometimes even. But what are you doing with it now? Like, how do you work with that on a daily basis outside of the fact that we're obviously getting ready for your upcoming release?
I took a pretty extended break from it. I actually like don't love being recognized on the street. My ultimate dream would be to be like successful and wealthy and anonymous. But like as a promotional tool, it is really important. So like I am trying to find the balance between having it be authentic and keeping myself private. And it's like you kind of can't help people having parasocial relationships with you. It's a big part of it, but like, I've changed my privacy controls. Like I'm a little bit harder to get to these days. Um, I'm posting about the book a lot. I'm posting about my dog a lot. Like it's a mix of like engaging with friends and engaging with readers.
Makes a lot of sense. Just checking on LinkedIn. If anybody's on LinkedIn, I know you're about a minute or two behind the live stream, but we're keeping an eye out for questions popping in. Um, I guess my other you're obviously going into the consulting role in this space as well. What kind of feedback are you getting or pushback maybe are you getting from the authors you're starting to work with? What does that look like?
It's mostly around not wanting to put their face on video. That's the biggest thing. People are so allergic to having to do that. And it's like, I get it. I'm not necessarily talking to camera either. But it's like, if you're paying me to tell you how to grow, that is what I'm going to say because that's how you grow. So that's like the biggest negotiation, which is why I came up with like ways to ease into it. To make it feel easier. But I mean, what's kind of nice about my consultancy work is that I went from working with agencies where I was doing social strategy for like Prime Video and Hulu and Disney and Tubi and for their brands and also for film and TV. And then I started working one-on-one with authors around their releases. And there's a lot to be learned from entertainment marketing to book marketing. And like I like to try to think about books, marketing campaigns for books as TV shows. So it's like, how can we extend the experience of the book? Which is basically what you're asking when you're marketing a TV show. Like, how do I come up with ways that people will engage in this content when they're not watching it on the TV? And so, something that works really well is memes.
Yeah.
Like the meme accounts for TV shows are massive. So, what I do for every single one of my books is as soon as I have the idea for the book, I start a meme folder on my phone. And that way, when I'm making carousels, I can kind of throw in a combination of press and memes. And it works really, really well. Like it's just like it's silly and fun and it's a format people recognize and it's kind of unusual for books. But it's like you have to speak in the language of the internet while you're on the internet. And so memes that are relevant to your book, whether you're making them or finding them, um, is great. So like for example, there was there was that still from Love Island last year, and it was one of them saying something about like, oh yeah, like that's my perfect date, and he knows that. And so I was working with an author, and we just changed it to like, oh, like a book launch, that's my perfect date, and he knows that. And it was like we made it feel very kind of DIY looking. Like I just did it in stories and like put the text at a diagonal, like over the copy, and it was like that post went viral for her.
Yeah. Yeah. We our firm reuses a meme once a week or so, and it always gets some sort of positive reception in a way that like our normal stuff doesn't. It's really fascinating. And it's so it's so easy if you can keep on top of it and find the joy in it. Because I think acknowledging like, yeah, this is corny, and but that's where the fun is. Makes a big
Yeah.
difference. Your first book was a memoir about your time in publishing or in media rather. Your second two books were somewhat related, you know, queer dystopian post-apocalyptic sci-fi. Obviously, very different concepts. I know your fourth book is going to be pretty different from your first three as well. Like you're talking about how people are still reaching out, having found your memoir from 2021, and you're reposting their stories and things like that. What do you feel the need to find a through line and tone or theme between all these books, knowing that they're fairly different?
Oh, do you not think that publishing and dystopia have something in common?
No comment, because I'm working in both spaces. I feel like on a daily basis.
I mean, I actually think that my all my books sound like me. Like, even though they're different genres, I think if you are familiar with my work and you saw my writing out of context, you would know that it's my voice. Sorry, what was the question?
No, I think that really answers it.
Okay.
So, the books are all fairly different in tone and subject matter, but you're right. Your voice as an author comes through in all of them. So I guess,
Yeah.
you identifying the through line being you and your point of view is a pretty big deal.
Yeah. I mean, I also like, I understand the ways in which queer climate fiction is fairly niche. There is a self-selecting audience for it. And with Long Island Girls, like even though the voice is still me, the point of view is still me, I do think there's a broader appeal to it. So I'm curious to see what the effect of that is. I mean, I know I'm not supposed to check my own Goodreads, but like I am addicted. And one of the best kind of good reviews that I get is when people say, I loved this book so much, I just went and bought all of her other books. And so it's like, then my reaction is like, okay, I hope you like climate change, but it's like, you kind of have to trust that, like, because they like you, they'll like the other things.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. I mean, my biggest fear anytime I find like a one-hit wonder from a band and then I go and look at the rest of their discography, I'm like, oh dang, this is not the same. So I
Yeah.
can imagine that being a thought in the back of your mind. But yeah, having read your first three at least, there is that through line there. That's interesting. It kind of takes that means then each book, if you're doing this properly, is sort of taking a backseat to you, just going back to you developing yourself and your voice for your audience.
Totally. And I think I might have said this the first time we did this webinar, but like the most important advice I ever got is to stop thinking about any one book as having the power to change your life. And I think that like rom-coms and pop culture have made us think that like your debut is going to set you up for success in every way. And it's like winning the lottery. Like it's just because it has happened to people does not mean it's going to happen to you, and that's
Yeah.
okay because a much more realistic and sustainable goal is having a book that does well enough to get you your next book deal and so on and so forth until you have built a body of work that will sustain you. And so what that means is what I said 5 minutes ago, which is people finding one book and then going back and reading the others. And like that's how you build a career. You don't build a career off of the success of one splashy book. And
Yeah.
even when that happens to people, it's their fifth book, you know? Like Station 11 was not Emily St. John Mandel's first book, far from it. So it's like, even if it seems like people came out of nowhere, like there's the saying, it takes 10 years to be an overnight success. I think that's really true.
Yeah, absolutely. And that really goes to what we preach a lot of at our firm, which is just like the things you should be focusing on are longevity, not how you're going to blow things out of the park every single project. It's how you're going to do a very, very good job on the current thing that you're working on, but keep an eye to what's coming next. And I mean, that's even something that we talk about in things as wrote as contracts when we're dealing with things and we're dealing with parties that we know our clients are going to deal with again in the future and something goes wrong. It's like, oh yeah, you could blow up this situation and make it into a really big deal. Or you could try to like mend fences and move on and know that the next three things you do with that other side is going to be coming off from a good foundation because you actually treated them like human beings that you know you're going to be working with for the next 5, 10 years. It goes the same with all. Makes perfect sense. And I think not to drag the legal into it, it's a good reason why every author should understand how copyright works and how trademark works and how all of this stuff works, particularly on social. Because going back to what I was saying about working at the magazine, almost a decade ago now, it's you can get in trouble if you're oversharing or if you are getting a little too aggressive with your memification of other people's work. So I think these are things you need to be Googling and looking up and talking to other professionals about as you go about doing things. It's not just like, how do I make the biggest splash right now? It's how do I make a cohesive splash that has good
Yeah.
ripples for a while that also don't get me in trouble. So I think as you're growing this stuff out, know that while social media is often considered the Wild West from like a legal perspective and an industry perspective, there's still a lot of rules around it. Doing it properly is important, particularly when you're hooked up to a large publisher who wants to make sure that you're not getting in trouble. Speaking of getting in trouble, maybe jumping off of legal and going more into like socio-political stuff, which we've been seeing people lose careers over the last handful of years, often for many justified reasons, but sometimes for not. Um, are there any, I know you mentioned from like a trend and engagement perspective, things you shouldn't be doing, but from like an overarching perspective, are there things you're thinking about, maybe politically or socially, without diving into anything too specific today?
Yeah. I mean, I think that if you have a platform and you want to use your voice to broadcast your political views, that's great. I don't think that authors need to behave like state elected officials. Like your readership does not automatically deserve your take on the news of the day just because you exist and are online. Like if for any reason you are afraid or uncomfortable or you find your activism is more effective in person, I think that's totally acceptable. I don't think that we want to live in a world where people's value is dependent on whether or not they repost political takes on Instagram. Like, I think we thought when Trump was running the first time that if we all just posted a lot, like we would get the word out. And obviously that didn't work. And so I do think there's a lot of fatigue around like Instagram activism right now. But I think a lot of my clients feel really stressed out about when to weigh in and why and how. And I think the ultimate question is this the most effective use of your time? Or instead of worrying about the wording of an Instagram story for an hour, do you want to call your senators?
I think that last piece of advice is always the best one that I tell
Yeah.
people anytime it like actually
Yeah.
do something. But it's
Yeah.
interesting because obviously the themes in some of your books are pretty radical and political, and maybe
Yeah.
radical is not the most appropriate word. Appropriately progressive is what I'll say. And you're going to have a core part of your audience who expect you to speak out about certain things, which maybe isn't fair. There is this weight that a lot of artists and celebrities are being put under right now of, hey, you should speak up because you have a platform. And it's tough because ultimately your platform is a business driver too. And when creating these parasocial relationships with your audience, which is what social media does, puts us all in a funny position where we go, okay, when can I draw the line on political, personal versus professional?
Yeah, and you can't live your life in under the fear of getting canceled for your beliefs. But you can certainly think about it when you decide what to engage with. And like again, there's just no such thing as the perfect opinion. And especially in more polarized spaces, like your take is never going to be left enough for a contingent of your followers. I'm sure the same is the case on the right. And the most radical people are, of course, always the most vocal. So it's like, do you want to risk pissing off a vocal minority to get your point across? And when is it actually important? And when does your silence become loud? I think is the question too. And it's like, um, it's so personal. It's so specific to every single person. It's so specific to every single issue. Um, I don't I don't know. I mean, I think for the authors with huge platforms, it's more important. Like if you have a small audience, I don't know if it matters that much. But it's like if you're someone with a fan base who idolizes you, and your opinion has the power to inspire people to do something, then yeah, like use your platform. That is important. But you know, I there's no like blanket rule about it.
That's tough. And there's certainly no line to draw between whether you're just some author or someone with an actual following, right? Because if
Yeah.
you have
And I
10
don't,
people, if you have 10 people who listen to you, who you don't know personally, that's more already than 99.9% of the population, right? The fact that you have anyone waking up to check in on what you have to say, despite the fact they've never met you in person, is unique and rare and not something that most of us have.
I know. And it's like sometimes I want to feel like nobody notices if you don't say anything. And then a couple years ago, someone made a spreadsheet of every author who hadn't posted about Israel and Palestine. And everyone was really freaking out about it. And then I clicked into it, and she had included James Baldwin,
Huh.
who is famously no longer alive.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, she
so
wasn't wrong. She wasn't wrong. It
yeah.
was,
So, you know, I don't know if this is helpful at all. It's so complicated.
no,
Like,
it is complicated. I don't think I would expect a full answer from you because this is something that in our practice we deal with on a weekly basis with other clients too, where we represent a wide gamut of different artists and creators, and many of them are fairly politically active, but even them deciding when to talk versus not is very, very difficult. And then of
yeah.
course, we see the backlash and we have to deal with it sometimes, and it's tough. And you never know when you're just going to piss off one follower on the internet who just happens to have, let's say, some really great access to AI tools that can create a nonsensical list like that very easily. It's easier than ever for the vocal minority to be heard and to get support because it's easy to create support for yourself now with all the tools that are out there. It makes for a weird time.
Totally. And like in my heart of hearts, I'm with the people, you know. I'm like, yes, like tear it all down, burn it to the ground, yell at everybody. But like if you could not yell at me, that would be great too.
it's it's really hard. It's really hard. And of course, if you are making yourself a public figure, people are going to be inclined to yell at you first, rather than maybe the people who actually have control and are just staying a little bit more behind the scenes. Um,
Well, that's the thing. It's like maybe if we poured all of this energy into like dismantling fascism versus like trolling people on Instagram, like something might change. Because it's like it's truly like when the trolls want to organize, they will organize. So if we could just like point them in a different direction.
I hear you. I don't think we're going to have an answer to that today, but it's definitely something that we're all keeping in the back of our mind, especially as things progress
Yeah.
right now with everything we're dealing with. But with that, we're about reaching time, so no more questions. It looks like. I guess I'll give you the floor if you have any parting words. If not, that's okay too, because I am putting you on the spot.
Yeah, I mean, my parting words are just how we started this, which is if you take anything away from my advice, it's to remember that nobody knows anything and don't get your feelings hurt by it. Just use the opportunity to remind people when your book is coming out, what your book is, if you're going on tour, what you look like. Just like think about the basics all the time. It's the most important thing you can do online.
For anyone watching this on YouTube, are you taking on new author clients? And if so, how can people reach out?
Thank you so much for asking. Yes, I am available to work on social campaigns with authors. If you go to my website, which is gabriellekorn.com, there's a contact me form. It does go to me. So if you reach out, I'll answer.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us. As always, it's a pleasure to have you. I'm sure we'll be back doing another one of these in a year or so, assuming you want to come back. But with that, thanks for everyone who joined us today for the live stream. This will be up on YouTube sometime in the next handful of days. We will be back next month with another webinar that we'll be announcing probably in the next week or two. So we hope to see you all in March. Take care, everybody.
Thank you so much.